All right, everyone, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you again for your patience, and thank you to those who were able to come in and participate and be here on time. I really appreciate it. This recording is going to be recorded, so we will post it on our Scope websites for Brandon and King, and probably a few days after this ends, so that if anyone misses anything, if they want to share any information with parents, friends, whoever, you guys will be able to watch the recording and go back to anything that you may have forgotten about or missed. So let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Amari Smith. I'm the scope coordinator at Brandon High School, and I'm also here with Deja.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Deja Wilson, and I am the scope coordinator at King High School.
Yes, so we are here today to host the Show Me the Money presentation. So we're going to talk about some of the avenues and ways that you can get some financial aid that you can use towards your post-secondary plans. So we'll go ahead and get into the agenda.
All right, so we'll have a few things to touch on. We'll talk about what financial aid is, how you can obtain financial aid, then we'll get into some questions that you may have, and then we'll go into the next steps.
If you could please put questions in the chat or hold them till the end, that'd be great.
All right, what is financial aid? Financial aid is funding for students attending post-secondary institutions. A common myth that people seem to believe is that financial aid is only for students that are enrolled in four-year universities, when that is far from the truth. There are tons of ways to have your post-secondary pathway funded, whether that's community college, four-year university, or trade school. There are plenty of options for you to have your education funded.
Exactly. So going on to some of the types of financial aid. So these are just some of the main categories that your aid may fall into. In the next few slides, we'll get into how we're going to actually get this money, where is it going to come from, things like that. So starting with gift aid. So gift aid, usually it comes in the form of grants or scholarships. So these can be need or merit-based. If something is need-based, that means it's based on financial need. So however much money you're awarded, or if you're awarded any money, it will be based on how much your family needs it. They'll use some sort of tax information or financial records to determine the need. If something is merit-based, then that means it's based on what you have accomplished kind of throughout your high school career. So GPA, test scores, community service, extracurriculars, that type of thing is all going into your merit. So a lot of times scholarships will be merit-based, but sometimes they can be need-based. This is also kind of where essays come into play and letters of recommendation. All that stuff is common when it comes to scholarship applications. Gift aid typically does not need to be paid back. Sometimes there may be instances where you would need to repay gift aid if you didn't meet a certain requirement. Maybe you were supposed to keep a specific GPA. Maybe you were supposed to be enrolled in an institution at full time, but you were only enrolled part-time. So you have to make sure that you pay attention to those that fine print so that you know what requirements you need to keep so that you don't have to repay any of this gift aid, because gift aid is really designed for it to be free money for you to use for school. So some examples of gift aid are Pell Grant, Bright Futures, outside private scholarships. Again, we'll get into what this all means and how to get these things in some of the future slides. Now on to work study. So this is also an option for financial aid. So this is a program where students can apply to be a part of, and you can earn a part-time job on or off campus that you can earn funding to use towards your post-secondary. Usually money from work study, it goes towards like your everyday expenses, food, maybe your books, things like that. So work study is a program that is super helpful for students that need some extra money to help them get through the day-to-day aspects of school. Work study also encourages like community service work and work closely related to your course of study. While it's not guaranteed that you may get a job that's in your course of study, that's kind of what the program is designed to do. But as long as you, then at the end of the day, as long as you have work, as long as you're being paid, that's the point of work study. Now, loans are another bucket that your financial aid can fall into. So you can have federal and or private loans. We're going to talk mostly about federal loans today through the FAFSA application. And typically, federal loans will have a few more perks than private loans. Federal loans typically will have a lower consistent interest rate than your private loans. Private basically means that you're going to like a bank like Chase Bank, Bank of America, something like that, where you're going and taking out a loan. We'll go in more in depth about how the federal loan process works in the next few slides. But federal loans typically, like I said, have a lower consistent interest rate. They also usually have more options for repayment plans than private loans. But make sure you're doing your research. If you need to take out a loan, loans should be the last resort when it comes to financial aid. You want to get as much funding as you can through scholarships, grants, anything else that you don't have to repay that's not going to accrue interest. Those are going to be your top priority. Loans are going to be the absolute last resort. If you have to take out a loan, you can then weigh, the consequences and decide if this is a good route for you and decide what loan you should take out. But again, last resort. They have to be paid back with interest. And then on the federal loan side, there's typically two categories, your subsidized and your unsubsidized loans, and we'll get more into the specifics of that in a few as well. So, obtaining financial aid. So I just kind of explained the categories of financial aid and a short definition of what they are, but where does it come from? So we are going to hear from Ms. Kimberly Bone, a financial aid counselor from HCC Brandon, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about FAFSA and how that all works.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to just briefly touch on the FAFSA. That is a free application for federal student aid, so you should not be paying anyone. You don't need really anyone's assistance to do this. It's all your own personal information. This is actually different from the Florida financial aid application, which a lot of you might be familiar with for Bright Future. So those are two different applications. You do need to complete them both if you are planning on using Bright Futures. So this application is a federal application. So no matter where your student is planning on going to college, this application, the information from this application can be sent to that school. Students can list up to 20 different schools or institutions on that application. Once that application is filled out, that basically qualifies them for the federal money, which would be the Pell Grant. It would be subsidized, unsubsidized loans. And also, if you are planning on applying for any Parent Plus loans. All of those, of course, being at that low interest rate. You do want to make sure that you sign up for your FSA IDs, and that is something that you can do immediately. If you'll take us to the next slide. In order to apply for FAFSA, you do have to be an eligible U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Students do have to have a Social Security number. If parents don't, there is a way for students to still apply and parents to complete their FSA ID as well. The financial records, you don't have to actually have your entire taxes. We now use the updated FAFSA now uses a federal direct tax exchange. So basically the data is directly imported. So when you go in and you set up your account and students and parents set up a totally separate account. So if you previously have done the FAFSA with a student, let's say 2 to 3 years prior, where you guys sat together and you put in all the information, now the student puts in their information, and based on that information, they will invite parents or contributors. So you would have to set up your own account. And in that, you have to grant the access for that data exchange to occur in order for students to be eligible. This actually decreases the amount of verifications that are required, and it increases the processing because there aren't as many discrepancies with tax records and information. And then, of course, you do have to attend a post-secondary institution. So again, you can go ahead and go in and set up your FSA IDs. The students and the parents can do that. And because right now they're beta testing, it is possible that some of you may actually be able to go ahead and complete the FAFSA. It's technically not set to open until December 1st, but they have been beta testing, and there have been some Florida students that have been able to submit their FAFSAs. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll go in a little bit deeper to some of the different types of aid that Amari talked about. The Pell Grant, of course, is that one that is the coveted one. That's the one that you don't anticipate having to pay back. It's a maximum of $7,395 per year as of this year. That is split between 2 terms. So if you're starting in the fall, it would be split between the fall and the spring. The maximum amount would be if you're eligible for the maximum amount. And then once that is split between the 2 terms, the fall term, let's say, would be $3,698. Where the award becomes tricky for students is that amount is not necessarily what the student would receive. The student receives a percentage of that based on their enrollment. So students that are enrolled in 12 credits or more would receive 100%. If you were enrolled in 6 credits, you would receive 50% of that, which is about $1,849 for that term. It is anticipated that you do not pay that money back. Every school has, of course, that satisfactory academic progress requirement that you have to maintain, which would be a completion requirement. So some schools have a completion requirement of 67%, which means you have to complete 67% of the courses you attempt each term. And then a GPA requirement, which for some schools is 2.0. If you don't meet those requirements, you can have your financial aid suspended. If you fail, withdraw from classes or change your enrollment, after receiving the money, they can ask you to pay that money back. When you apply for the FAFSA, that Pell Grant is federal money. The work study money is also federal money. Once the FAFSA gets to the institution that you've selected, that institution will then consider any other state funding or institutional funding that your student could be eligible for. So one thing I would just like to encourage you to consider is, even if you think your income might be out of the range of Pell eligibility, it might still be within the range of state eligibility and institutional eligibility for other available grant funding. So please consider that a lot of that money is first come, first serve. Even if it's need-based, once that money runs out, the state only provides so much to each school. And once that money runs out, then it would no longer be available for students to be awarded. So finishing and completing that FAFSA in a timely manner is always a good thing. And again, if you go ahead and get your FSA IDs completed, it's very possible you might be able to go ahead and get in on that beta testing. The work study basically revolves around the need. Different schools handle it differently. I know with HCC, work study is done on campus, and there has to be a position available for you. It really is going to depend on the institution you choose, how they do their work study. I'm going to flip over to the loans and talk to you a little bit about the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized. With both types of loans, you're not looking at paying those loans back until 6 months after you graduate, stop attending, or attend less than half time. You do have to be in 6 credits to be eligible for the loans to disperse. The subsidized loans, the interest is paid by the government until you reach that graduation, the 6 months after you graduate, stop attending, or attend less than half time. And then the unsubsidized, of course, the interest accrues immediately. We do have students who choose to only accept the subsidized if needed. And then you can accept less than the offered amount. So for example, if you only need a certain amount to supplement to cover the cost of your classes, depending on the institution you choose, You can just select that amount, but there is a maximum amount. You are required to complete a master promissory note and entrance and exit counseling. And even though you'll be awarded through the institution that you select, all of that is completed back in your FSA account, and that you will be assigned a servicer through the federal government. So the federal government has several servicers. So any repayment options, any delays, any postponements will occur through the federal government.
I wanted to mention something real quick. Sorry, Kim.
That's fine. I was actually done.
About the credits. So just to clarify, if anybody is kind of unsure about like how college credits work, typically one college class is 3 credits for the most part. Some may be less, some may be more, but typically it's 3. So if you're taking 12 credits, so that would be about 4 classes. That's what's traditionally seen as full-time. So if you're a full-time student, you're in at least 12 credits, at least 4 classes, you should be good. So that 6 credits puts you at half-time or part-time student status. So that's about 2 classes. So just so that y'all are aware what
That's a good clarification. Thank you for that.
For sure. And yeah, like Kim said, you can create your FSA IDs today and hopefully get in there and get started. If you want to explain this QR code.
Okay, so this is basically, we do all of our scheduling for appointments is online. Now, I am not suggesting at all that anyone needs to run out and make an appointment, but as you're moving through the process, should you have any questions, then you can go online and you can schedule an appointment. It's really important to know that until you fill out the FAFSA, there's really nothing to discuss with us. We really can't even until we know what your eligibility is. And for us, like you have to have all of your application completed for HCC. And that does include those official high school transcripts with your graduation type. So a lot of times when you first send your transcripts, they don't have a graduation type on them. You won't be awarded your financial aid. Usually for high school seniors, it's going to be at least mid-June until we receive that official high school graduation type. We'll know your eligibility. You'll be able to see that as well when you complete your FAFSA. You'll get a summary statement. So you'll have an idea of your eligibility, but you won't get an official award until all of your components of your entrance to the college have been completed. But if you want to make an appointment to ask any questions, or you're having difficulty with your parent accounts or linking up your accounts, that might be something that one of us could assist you with. Sometimes it's helpful if you come in with your parent and you're side by side and we can look at the accounts together. Oftentimes it's a typographical error that is causing the links to not occur between the 2 accounts. But that's just a QR code to make an appointment.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to scholarships. Like Amari said earlier, scholarships are gift aid. They typically do not have to be repaid unless you read the fine print and those special circumstances occur. They are merit or need-based. So again, need-based is financial need. So based on your parents' financial situation, how much money you would need to attend school, and merit-based based on academics, athletics, if you're in a sport, if you're in a performing arts, if you're in band, like any type of thing that you do outside of your academics, those would be merit-based. You definitely have to do your research when it comes to scholarships. It's a lot of work. You want to look in all places, the schools that you're interested in looking or applying to, look on their website. So if you're interested in applying to USF, look on USF's website. Most colleges and universities have foundations where alumni gives back, and they have scholarships available for students attending, scholarships for students who are enrolled. So you want to look at their specific website to see what type of scholarships they have available. Religious and civics group, community organizations, employers, corporations, and foundations. These are all places that you can look for them. You can even look at your favorite places to shop. Lots of stores have scholarships available for students. I know Target has one. Amazon has scholarships for students who are interested in computer science. even McDonald's, they have scholarships for students. So look everywhere. There are all types of scholarships out there for people, and you have to be prepared to do the work. A lot of the times, these scholarships are going to require essays. Most of the time, they're not more than 500 words, but sometimes it can be a little more, just depending on the requirements. You're going to want to pay attention to see if they will require letters of recommendation, so you know who to reach out to get those recommendations, and just be prepared to apply as many as you can. Scholarships stack. You don't have to decline one scholarship versus the other unless they conflict. So if you get a scholarship specifically for USF, but you choose to go to UF, obviously you can't use that USF scholarship at UF, but most of the time scholarships do stack, and you'll be able to use that money towards your tuition, towards books, towards housing, towards room and board, anything that you need, you'll be able to put that money towards. And then go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. FastWeb is one of those websites where you can go and see all the types of scholarships. There's literally tons of them out there, tons that have different types of eligibility based on cultural background, based on a specific instrument. If you play a very rare instrument, there might be a scholarship out there for you. So just do the work, put in the work, do the research, and see what's out there, because there are plenty of things out there for you to fund your education.
And real quick, before I go to the next slide, I want to add one thing. Like Deja was saying about like them stacking, I always just love to tell students that like if you get more scholarship money, more financial aid through the Pell Grant, through scholarships than what your schooling costs, then you'll get a refund check from the school with whatever is left over. So there's no such thing as applying to too many scholarships. Once you earn that money, it's yours. First, it'll go to the school, pay off your tuition or room and board or whatever bills you owe to the school. Then it'll go back to you, and you can use that money for you. Go ahead. You want to add?
I do. So if you are a student who is eligible for Pell and you are receiving scholarships or you're receiving Bright Future, that does not count towards your Pell. So you would still be eligible for that same amount of Pell, because that Pell is based on financial need. And for example, your other scholarships and your other awards were based on merit. So you could technically receive full Pell, receive Bright Futures, and also receive scholarships, even if your parents have jobs that do tuition reimbursement and things like that. That money is not counted towards the income that is counted for your Pell calculations.
Yes, thank you.
And now we'll have Miss Angie Anthony. She is the HEF's Director of Scholarship and Grant Programs, and she's going to talk to you guys about our HEF Senior Scholarships.
Thank you, Deja. So Deja gave me a great intro as she talked about hunt all over and look every place that you can possibly think of, and the places you didn't, for scholarships. But we have a one-stop shop for you that has quite a few. To get your attention, the amount that we gave to students last year was $906,000. That wasn't a national figure. That went to simply Hillsborough County high school seniors. There were about 330 awards. They ranged from $500 up to $40,000, and we even had some Florida prepaid plans. We don't expect this year to be any different. So if there's one thing you apply for, make sure it's our senior scholarships, because you're essentially reaching over 100 named scholarships. So we have various donors. Again, as Deja introduced, different philanthropical organizations, individuals, we have endowments, we have all kinds of buckets of money. And you don't just have to be going to a traditional university or to a community college. I have money for cosmetology school, automotive, carpentry, welding, and they're great livings. We know, and donors know more, that not every student is going the traditional path of the four-year university. So make sure you apply. It is one simple application. We try to keep it simple. I hear sometimes when I'm out in the schools from students who think, I won't get one, I'm not good enough. We have some that don't even have minimum GPAs. We have many with GPAs that are 2.5 to 3.0. And I like to say that I feel like we have a little something for everybody. There's some kind of bucket for just about everybody. So who should apply? Every single Hillsborough County high school senior should be in our system that you can access through this QR code or the website address that I put underneath it. Next slide. When do we do this? When are we giving all this money away? Well, the application period is going to start on November 1st and it runs through January 31st. There's plenty of time. What big hints can I give you? Do not wait until the last minute. You're on here and you get to hear the tips and tricks. So sometimes people look at the application and they think this isn't a big deal. I can do it the night before it's due. And that never works out well. So what happens is, based on what you're qualified for, more questions come up. So Deja again set me up by saying, you're going to have to write some essays. Ours are pretty short. Most of them are only 250 words. That's a big paragraph. You can do this. But you can't see them all until you've done the general application. So they don't appear, many of them do not appear until you finish that application, and then it sees what you qualify for. Because let's say a scholarship has an extra essay, but the GPA requirement is a 3.5 and yours is a 3.4. Why should you write that essay? So we don't ask everybody to write every single essay, only those that qualify. That's my big takeaway. So if you need help, I'm available. I'm always around. And if you don't get me by phone or by email, I will get back to you, I promise. I will be posting some Zoom office hours, just kind of a pop in, pop out. You know, we're going to do a meeting just like we are here. Everybody can unmute, ask me whatever questions you have, and I'll be glad to help you. Your scope office coordinators who are on our call are always there to help you. They are fantastic. They know how our system works. They're very skilled, and also your school counselors. So you have lots of resources. And as you're going through the application, if you don't understand a question, ask somebody, ask for help, because they might seem like stupid or silly little questions, but they're checking boxes to indicate that you're qualified for things. So getting it right is important. I could talk about scholarships for a full hour, and I plan to on Thursday. So we're going to have a Scholarships 101 webinar where I go through the system and I talk about criteria and I talk about the donors and I talk about what happens through the period and how we score. And then what happens if you're awarded a scholarship. So that's a don't miss. But let's say you can't get in, because I can tell you right now, there's only about 40 spots left. We're going to record it. So you can always check it out later. And again, we have a QR code for you and the website address. You have my information there, my contact information. Just let me know if you need help.
Thanks, Angie.
You're welcome.
All right, so the last financial aid piece we're going to touch on is Bright Futures. Through my time at being at Scope, I've noticed that a lot of students still don't know what Bright Futures is, which is so shocking to me because it's a great opportunity for Florida students. So there are 4 categories of Bright Futures. The most common of the 4 are the Florida Academic is the Florida Academic Scholarship and the Florida Medallion Scholarship. So I'll start with those 2. The Florida Academic Scholarship is the toughest one to get because it has the highest requirements. You need at least a 3.5 weighted GPA, 100 service hours, or 100 paid work hours. You have to make sure that you're logging your hours with your counselor. I also see that a lot with students, that they have hours that aren't logged with their counselor, or they have hours and they just aren't logged anywhere. They haven't kept track of anything. So make sure that you're keeping track of your service hours and or work hours so that you get credit for what you have done. It's also important to note you can do a combination of service and work hours to get to 100. So you can do 50-50 or 80-20 or whatever, as long as you get to that 100. You also need you need 16 college prep high school courses. So those are going to be all the courses that you already need to graduate. But in addition to that, you also have to do 2 credits of a foreign language. So I see a lot of students miss that. So make sure that you're doing your foreign language classes and it has to be the same language. So not Spanish one year, French the next year. You have to take the same language twice. And they also have a minimum ACT and SAT score. There's also a CLT score that's not on here. But if you plan on taking the CLT and you want to look into that, you can come see one of us in scope and we can get you that actual number. But the SAT and the ACT are more common. So we have those scores up here. They are high, like the SAT score is definitely up there. So that's why a lot of students will have the GPA and they'll have the hours, but the test score holds them back. So make sure that if you're going for Bright Futures, that you are doing your best on these exams, that you're taking them at the very least twice, because you can super score your exams, take the highest score from each section, put it together, that's your super score, and Bright Futures accepts that. So you should definitely be taking the SAT and or ACT at least twice. And then the Florida Academic Scholarship covers 100% of tuition for 4 years at a Florida institution. Now, it depends whether you're going public or private. If you're going to a public university or a public college or university, it will cover your tuition in full for 4 years. If you go to a private university, it's going to cover that tuition at a public university rate. So whatever the standard public university tuition rate is, which I believe is somewhere around the six to 7,000 range, that's what's going to go towards a private university's tuition, which private universities are going to be significantly more expensive than your public. So just keep that in mind. If you are eligible for Bright Futures and you're thinking about going to a private school, it's not going to cover your full tuition. The other level for this side on the left is the Florida Medallion Scholarship. So that's a 3.0 GPA, 75 service hours or 100 work hours, or you could do a combination of both. But if you do the combination for this, you'll need to get to 100. Again, the 16 high school credits, and then the ACT, SAT, or CLT score. And then you see the scores for those exams are a bit lower, but more reasonable to achieve. So definitely want to be doing your best on these exams so that you can get this scholarship. The Florida Medallion Scholarship covers 75% of tuition for 4 years at a Florida institution. Same thing with the public versus private. It's only going to cover at a public university rate. If you end up going out of state, you're not going to be able to use Bright Futures. Bright Futures is only for students that are in the state of Florida. Now, on the other side, on the right side, we have the Gold Seal CAPE Scholarship and the Gold Seal Vocational. These two are a lot less common because I think that a lot of students just don't know that it exists. So this is going to be for students that are looking more towards that technical college route. But even the Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship can be used towards an associate's degree. So if you are planning to do a 2-year degree at a community college, you can use the Gold Seal Vocational for that. But you can see the requirements there. These are going to be for students that have earned some credits in your career or technical courses. So like if you're in culinary, early childhood education, if you have, I know Brandon has auto maintenance, business classes, anything like that are going to fall into your CAPE or your CTE, your career programs. So you just have to make sure that you are meeting the requirements if you want to go for the Gold Seal CAPE or the Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship. These, for the award amount for these two scholarships, it's not as straightforward as the other two where it's 100% or 75%. These two have fixed rates that they will award based on whatever program you're going into. So this depends a little bit more. So if you think that you're eligible or want to be eligible for these two, definitely see your scope coordinator, make an appointment, or go talk to your school counselor so we can look more into how to get you ready for these Bright Futures scholarships. So once you have the eligibility for these, you're going to want to complete the Florida financial aid application. If you meet all the requirements and you don't complete the application, you're not going to get the award. So make sure you do that no later than August 31st after you graduate from high school. So you have plenty of time to make sure you get the requirements that you need. You really shouldn't be waiting till August 31st. You should really have this application submitted latest by the time you're graduating high school. You should be good with your testing, your hours. Your counselors aren't going to be logging hours over the summer. So you need to make sure your hours are in before the end of the year. So that's kind of a brief overview for Bright Futures. But if you want some more in-depth one-on-one talk, you can see your scope coordinator or your counselor. All right. So if anybody has any questions about anything that we've talked about so far, please feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead and just pop in if you have any questions about anything. And if you are worried, if you can't think of anything right now, it's no worries. You can come see us in scope or join some of those info sessions if anything comes up. But we'll see if anyone has questions. Well, we must have did a really great job. We must have gave all the information. But I know it's a lot to take in. So let it sink in. If your parents weren't on, talk to your parents. See what, discuss the financial path that you guys might want to take when it comes to deciding what your path is going to be after high school. Chamoy, you raised your hand?
I did. Good evening, everyone. I think a really good question to ask, especially for our listeners tonight, is Ms. Bone, you talked about contributors for the FAFSA. What exactly is a contributor?
So a contributor is going to be parent or parents who are required to provide their financial information on the student's FAFSA. So when students are completing their FAFSA, there's going to be like a wizard that's going to go through and ask them different questions. One of the questions will be, are your parents married? And if they're not married, it's going to ask and try to help the student determine which parent contributes more than 50% of support for that student. And then that student is the parent that will be invited to contribute. So the student will be required to provide the parent's email, the parent's birth date, and the parent's social security number, which can be very tricky when a parent gets texted by their child, I need your social security number. So typically, I always say to the students, you probably want to do this with your parents because they're more comfortable giving that social security number when they're right there. But they do need that for the invitation.
Thanks. Okay. So speaking of FAFSA,
we have some questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Go for it. I didn't see them.
Okay, I see. Spurn, you asked, the application for student aid opens on November 1st. So the application for the HEF senior scholarships, that opens November 1st. As Ms. Bone said earlier, they are beta testing FAFSA, so you might be able to apply for FAFSA now, but if not, that will open to the general on December 1st.
But go ahead and do your FSA ID. So if there's any identity issues, those are cleared up right away. Believe it or not, we have had several parents who it's taken them, and this is a unique circumstance, but it has happened where there have been parents who it's taken them 2 months to get their FSA ID accounts set up because of Social Security errors. Things they didn't even know were a problem that existed until they went to set up their FAFSA account. And sometimes it can go back to previous experiences where they were applying for financial aid for themselves. So it's a good idea to go ahead and start the FSA ID process now, even if they don't get to fill out the FAFSA until December.
So a student asked where their previous Profferfish hours will go. So yes, this is very unfortunate with the whole Profferfish situation with logging service hours. Profferfish is no longer used. I would say talk to your counselor, because your counselor is the one that's going to be in charge of making sure that all of your service and your work hours are logged and officially on your transcript. They're not official until they're on your transcript. So set up a meeting with your counselor, talk to them about your previous Profferfish hours, see if they can help you recover them somehow, or see if they can figure out a way to give you credit for those previous hours that you've earned. But that'd be the best bet. Were there any other questions in the chat?
No, those are the only questions.
Okay, cool. All right. So we have some events coming up to help you and your families complete the FAFSA application. So for all my people at Brandon High School, we're going to be having a FAFSA night on December 9th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So this is your opportunity to come with your parents and get some support with filling out the FAFSA application. So definitely suggest coming, even if you've done FAFSA a few years ago and you think you've got it. FAFSA has changed a lot in the last few years, so it'll be just a good time to make sure that you're doing everything correctly and you're set for completing the FAFSA application. King High School will also be having one December 12th, 6 to 7:30. So just keep an eye out for more information and flyers for those. We'll have another one in the spring, probably in January or fall, just to catch anybody that missed the December event. So if you do miss December, we'll have another one in the spring. And we should be having some incentives and some gift cards and some things to give away. So definitely come if you to complete the application and get some free stuff.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. We're happy to help you with any type of questions that you have. Hopefully, you've gotten a better understanding about how you can fund your post-secondary pathway. If you need any assistance, you can scan these QR codes, one for King, one for Brandon, to schedule an appointment to come see me or Miss Smith in Scope. And again, this recording will be saved and it'll be posted on our individual websites. But if there are no other questions, thank you again so much, and you guys are free to go.
Thank you all so much.